Hi, everybody. I thought I would do something different. Normally, I get a comic or a trade paperback graphic novel, lay it on a white table, the camera's overhead, and I'll talk about the comic. I'll give my insights. I'll point out things that I find are interesting. And lately, though, I've had some thoughts about the impact of the current economic climate on comics right now and what they could be later on this year. So I decided to step in front of the camera, which is really not what I like doing. I mean, I know there are people that have YouTube channels where they'll have the camera facing them and they'll hold the comic up and they'll point stuff out. And there has to be an audience for it. It must work because those people have more subscribers than I do. But for me, it's usually let's focus on the comic and let me stay out of it. But also, as you get older, it's good to get out of your comfort zone once in a while. Um, when you get older, there's tendency of just kind of like staying in your lane and being comfortable. But this is how you stay mentally young by doing these things that maybe you're not fully comfortable doing, but you will be glad that you did them. And even if you fail or it's not that successful, at least you did something different. And that's the key, I think, in my mind, to being open minded to being current. So here goes. I got the idea of doing this from a YouTube channel that I saw where there's someone that talks about comics, key issues, investing, that sort of thing, current trends. And they were talking about the recent like drop in prices that key collector issues are getting. Um, they're not at pre-pandemic levels, but they are lower than they were a year ago. And when he explained it, he gave the prime reason as the economy, and that is correct. It is the economy, but I think a lot of times people say, "Oh, it's the economy," or fears of recession, but they're like almost like buzzwords. I think there's a lot more nuance to that. So I thought I could just talk about that and a couple other things that have been in my mind. Because just to give you some background myself, in real life, I'm a licensed CPA. I've been one for 30 years, and I follow the stock market and investing for over 25. And I've been through three major asset bubbles. I've been through the dot-com bubble. I've been through the housing bubble. Now we've experienced the crypto bubble. And if you count the bubbles that you had in comics and collectibles in the early 90s and the one you've just had within the last 2, 3 years, that's five asset bubbles that I've witnessed. So because of my background, I always look at things from a financial point of view. Does the numbers make sense? What could be driving it? Because a lot more is driven by numbers and by finances and by money than I think a lot of people either realize or want to realize. So this is my perspective. So the first topic I wanted to discuss was this drop in prices for key collectors. And I think there's four reasons why that's happening. One, the cause of this speculative bubble being the stimulus payments and the expanded unemployment benefits really kind of fueled putting all this money. Now, I'm glad that those things were done. That came straight out of the Ben Bernanke playbook. Not to get too economic nerdish here, but they did the right thing. But there were people that either they had low expenses or in some cases people were making more money at home sitting there with the expanded unemployment benefits than they would if they were working their regular job because the wages were so low. So there's this extra money floating around, and some of it went into speculative items like comics, collectibles. That money's all been spent. That money's been spent for a while. It's either been spent, it's been saved, or it's been used to pay off debt, or all three. So the thing that gave that initial engine to this bubble, that's long gone. Number two, I think the impact of the crypto bubble crash has affected the economy more than people care to admit. And as I mentioned, I've gone through and witnessed all these bubbles and seen them pop. And what I've noticed, and the thing that I always look at during these asset bubbles, is the effect it has on human psychology, how people behave. Because when people have an asset that has inflated value and a lot of money, they act like they have that amount of money in cash. So like if you had a house that you bought for $100,000 and then 10 years later is worth $600,000, people tend to act like they have $600,000 in the bank, but they don't. So they spend and they think in their mind, they rationalize it by saying, well, if something happens, I can sell my house and I can pocket, $400,000, $500,000 and I can move into a smaller place. But what happens eventually is that asset bubble pops, and then that asset isn't worth that much money, but you've been spending all this money and you have all this debt. I'm sure the same thing happened in crypto. I mean, uh, Bitcoin went from $68 a coin and it was supposed to go to 100,000, and now it's gone back up to 23, which I don't think is sustainable. But if you were like in something other than Bitcoin or Ethereum and you were like these altcoins, you got hammered. You probably lost 90% of your investment and within a relatively short period of time. So I think people were acting like they had a lot of money and they were spending accordingly. And all of a sudden now they had $100,000 and worth of crypto, and now it's worth anywhere from 8,000 to like 20,000. Still a lot of money, but it's you behave differently when you think you have $100,000 as opposed to having $8,000. And I think, I mean, and you can look at it in home sales. You can look at home sales decreased in 2022, especially the second half of 2022. Car sales, boat sales, um, they've all decreased and they're all really slow. Um, and that's because people realize, oh, I really don't have this money. I had all this crypto, but it's just vaporware now for the most part. And now I can't really go out and spend money like a drunken sailor because I really don't have the assets there. So I think that's part of it. I think, and that's not just, I said, comics and collectibles, but a lot of other things. And I think the impact of that is a lot, it's very understated. I think in time people will realize the impacts of that into the broader economy. Number three is inflation. Inflation is a real thing, and it's not inflation in just luxury goods or things that, like trips or vacations that most people take very sparingly during the year. There's inflation in gas, there's food inflation, even staple foods that used to be cheap. Like, I don't know what it costs in your neck of the woods, but to get a carton of eggs, dozen eggs, runs anywhere between 4.5 and $5. And I'm not talking about the nice brown eggs that are cage free, that taste better and look better that I like. I'm talking about just plain old white eggs. And if you're single or you have low expenses or you make a good salary and you have a lot of discretionary income, it bites less. But if you are paying a mortgage or you have a mortgage and a car payment and or you have kids, that discretionary spend really decreases because you have to spend more money on basic needs. So I think that's part of it too. And lastly, it's the increase in the Fed Reserve rate with the Federal Reserve rate hikes. Those rate hikes are the right thing to do. I think that the Federal Reserve and a lot of other central banks fell asleep at the wheel and just kept rates low artificially because it was good for the economy, but then the economy got overheated. And when you raise the Federal Reserve, when the Federal Reserve raises rates, what that does is it makes borrowing more expensive. So therefore, people are less willing to take loans because costs are higher. So they're thinking about that, and that ultimately leads to a slowdown in the economy, and a slowdown in the economy reduces inflation. Now, if you slow down too much, then in some cases you're going to have a recession. This is why the recession is being floated around. And even though we don't have a recession right now, all you have to do is say the word recession, and companies use it as an excuse to just lay off people. You've seen that in the tech industry. The tech industry has laid off thousands and thousands of jobs. Google has laid off 10,000 people or 12,000 people this past week. Amazon's, I think it's like 18,000 people. I mean, you're talking tens of thousands of jobs. And these are high paying jobs. And these people are making a lot of money. A lot of cases, they have discretionary income. They're the ones that are going to be playing the stock market or investing in crypto or buying speculative assets or buying all this cool stuff. And they may get jobs, but they may not command the same salary they did because all of a sudden you have this influx of tech workers and it's supply and demand. More supply, then the price goes down. So And that's just that one sector. But I think in the broader economy, a lot of companies are using this fear of recession to say, hey, we're laying off people. And I've seen it where, oh, we're laying off people because of recession. And there is no recession. There may not be one. But that also impacts the economy and impacts people's willingness to spend on non essential items, unless you're really wealthy and it doesn't matter. So that's kind of long winded, but those are my four reasons why I think you're seeing that decrease in key issues, and you're going to continue to see a decrease if times get tougher. And I think they will. Everybody thinks the Federal Reserve is going to let take the foot off the gas. They're not, and a soft landing is very difficult to achieve. I think the Federal Reserve is finally doing what they need to do, but these things impact everything, including our hobby. So that's the first thing I wanted to discuss. The second thing I wanted to discuss is more like just thoughts about how this would impact the original art market. Now, I have some original art, but not a lot. The original art market, for especially for independent art, has really gone up during this speculative bubble. And you can make the argument that it's been underpriced, and I think there is validity to that argument. But, and I think people that really are into original art, they have more discretionary spend or willing to spend it than people that normally can't afford to be in that space. I have a feeling that prices aren't going to really drop. I think they'll stabilize, but I think you will have less demand. And I think you're going to see more agents that are handling original art start giving discounts, start having sales, very low key, but they're going to start incentivizing people to spend money, because if you're an agent and you're representing a bunch of cartoonists and you're not selling art, they're going to say, hey, are you selling any art? No. Why? Oh, well, the economy. And you sit there. You got to get some money in the door that you can give them so they're happy with you, or they'll take their business elsewhere. So I think over time you'll see, I don't know about the prices dropping, but you're going to see more incentives as far as discounts and sales, and more generous terms as far as financing these purchases as we get through the rest of the year. I could be wrong, and I don't really have a big presence in the original art market. So if anybody knows or has any insight, and you're not in the business to make money, someone who's just buying it, I'd really like that, your thoughts, because you're closer to that space than I am. I'm just thinking of it financially. Demand is going to go down. What does that do to a collectible? And lastly, I started thinking longer term the impact it would have on retailers. Um, I'm buying less comics. I'm being very selective of what I buy. And I have a lot of friends that have told me the same thing. They're buying less books. Even people that I know that would normally spend just, oh, I like this book, I bought it, I bought it, I bought it, and just buying a ton of books. Like, not even like looking for like really good deals, just like buying books, almost like therapy. Even they've told me, hey, I'm buying less books. So you have less people in my mind buying less books. So what does that do? It puts pressure on the retailers, because the margins are slim. You're going to have, I mean, I've seen stores that are like reducing their hours. They're closed like an extra day or two. They may let go of staff because we have an economic slowdown. I think that people are spending less. They're looking for more deals. And I think that if we have a recession, which is likely, I mean, how bad, we don't know. I'm not a doom and gloom guy, but if you look at history of the U.S. economy, we probably will have some type of recession. And you don't know if it's more geographical than other. I mean, definitely in the Silicon Valley is geographical, because they're just losing tens of thousands of jobs. But I think if you have a long, protracted recession, you're going to have a lot of retailers that are going to be hurt, and you're going to have some that are going to maybe go out of business. Because I remember Gary Groth in an interview with Cartoons Kayfabe said that if comics could survive the pandemic, they could survive almost anything. That's true, except that during the pandemic, the government was giving people a lot of money. They were giving them money just to survive. People aren't getting money now to survive. So this is when you really have to like cut expenses. Again, this is the average person, not the wealthy person. But I think if you have a long protracted one, I think that the likelihood of stores closing or the consolidation in the industry as far as retailers go is a lot more likely. The only thing that I would say is that when you think about what stores you really like for me, it's Phantom of the Attic out of Pittsburgh. They're my LCS, even though I'm 1,400 miles away. And my second favorite store is, my other favorite store is Gutter Pop Comics, Buffalo, 1421 Hurdle Avenue, Buffalo, New York. Stephen Floyd runs that. He's a great retailer. He's good for the industry. If I buy books, I'm gonna buy from them. I mean, I buy my monthly books, what few I get from Phantom of the Attic, but I'm also gonna like look to see about getting books if I get books from them. I want those retailers around. They're good retailers. They're good for the industry. They're good for the hobby. They're good for us. You may want to think about that too. Like, hey, if this store closed down, would I really be sad? Would it be like really bummed out? Not because you go there all the time, but because they're just a really uniquely great store. You may want to think about making sure you spend money there. I know we're all looking for deals, but if these stores go out of business, then we're going to be buying everything from Amazon. And that's the last thing I want. Besides that, they ship their books like crap. And that's really it. Those are my thoughts. I don't know if anybody has different thoughts or concurs, but this is, like I said, this is what I look at when I look at things. I think about the financial impact. I think about how does that impact, and then what do you do? And as I said, I don't want to be a doom and gloom guy, but depending on if we have a recession, how mild it is or how strong it is, how long it lasts, that's going to impact a lot of things in the industry. And one thing I forgot to mention also, smaller publishers. You're going to have a lot of small publishers that probably going to go out of business. I mean, you see Aftershock already filed for bankruptcy. You don't hear anything from TKO Studios and other small publishers like SourcePoint Press. I'm not really thinking about Fantagraphics and Drawn and Quarterly. They have a really solid fan base. Fantagraphics will sell a lot of stuff that makes them money, so will Drawn and Quarterly. I'm not really thinking about them. I'm thinking about the really small publishers. They may not be around, which may be a good or bad thing. But these are just things I think to consider because we're in our hobby and we're like buying our books, and then all of a sudden we find out, oh, this publisher's out of business, or oh, this store's closing down. What happened? Well, it happened because of this. So maybe if enough people think about these things and incorporate them in their buying decisions, maybe you can help keep some places open. I mean, that's what I'm going to do, but that's just me. Anyway, thanks. Hope you found this informative. And until next time, thanks.